After the establishment of Georgetown and Launceston in the early 1800s, exploration of the northeast coast began. One of the earliest European settlements in the northeast was at Waterhouse. A property was established here in the 1830s by Mr. Charles Hardwick. James Scott in 1836 recorded in his journal meeting Hardwick's men at the crossing of the Great Forest River at Bridport. They were taking 1800 sheep to Mr. Hardwick's property at Waterhouse. Other names associated with early properties in this area included Thomas Williams, Ellen Moriarty and William Morgan. Morgan later established a place at Boobyalla. Scott surveyed all along the coast to Boobyalla, mapping William Henry Brown's property near the mouth of the Ringarooma River. Between 1830 and 1912, the Waterhouse area was farmed by a number of families. Charles Hardwick Jr. and Thomas Williams Jr. ran the Waterhouse estate until 1892, when the rest of Waterhouse was sold to Richard Hardman of Morningside in Scottsdale. In 1912, the property was sold to Mr. W.L. von Bibra. Mr. and Mrs. Clifford ran the Waterhouse Homestead for 25 years before selling to Eric Nicholls. I'm talking to Eric Nicholls, present owner of the Waterhouse estate. Eric, how long have you been associated with this property?
Well, I've actually owned the property since 1980, Jeff, but I had a lot of contact with the place for many years prior to that.
Okay.
Travelling through here to Waterhouse Island with my father and right back to childhood, really. Yeah.
And has it always been a sheep property?
Oh, well, yes, as far as I know. Yeah, mainly sheep, yes. It's just a simple grazing property, really, yeah.
And this building behind us would be what, one of the few surviving originals?
Well, it would be the only probably the only original shearing shed in the district, I think. Yeah, well, we're inside the shed. The old wool shed at Waterhouse now, Bob, and I have seen this old shed working with 5 shearers. It was originally a 5-stand shearing shed, and I've seen 5 shearers working down there, and for every shearer there was about at least a couple of people. So, with about 15 at least people working in the shed, it was a very busy place. There was a big old double box Kurtz wool press sitting about here, right in front of us when I first came here. Unfortunately, been destroyed by ants or something, and it had turned to powder basically. But the old shed apparently worked all right. With the 5 shearers, there was a motor standing on the concrete block there, and the overhead gear right down there, and. But it was been very primitively built and built a long time ago. As I said, we don't know when, but you will notice some of the features of the building. The top plates are put together with wooden pegs, and the studs are all mortised into the top plates. Nails were pretty much non-existent in those days, I expect. Yeah, it's in some ways it was quite good compared to modern wool sheds because of the height. It was much higher roof than the more modern wool sheds, and the shearers thought it kept them quite cool. Yeah, well, we're in the yard here at Waterhouse, near the Homestead, and when you look around, it's hard to imagine that there were people running sheep here right back in the 1830s. And in fact, by the 1860s, there were, according to John Beswick, who's done a lot of work on investigating, I think he said there were about 60 people gave their address as Waterhouse and Homestead in the 1860 census. And all of this before Scottsdale was even explored. I can't help but think of what hardy souls they must have been. If you look around here, you can see that there were all the buildings necessary to run a small community. There was a little school here and a post office, and there was a milking shed over there, and a fowl shed, and a killing shed, and a shed to hang the skins from the livestock that were killed for rations, and it was all here. And the access, I think, was by a sandy track through to Piper's River, I think. But the history of the buildings, there was a house here that was burned down, I don't know when. The original homestead was burned down because someone died in it. It wasn't found for a long time, and the second homestead burned down in 1938, and the present one was built then for the von Boobyalla family, who owned the property at that time. And the house was built on quite a large scale. There was it was built for the manager and his family, and also they had a very nice lounge room and a large bedroom for Mr. von Boobyalla when he came up to visit the property. So the house finished up with about 5 bedrooms, I think, and of course in those days there were all the big pantry storage areas, and so it is quite a substantial home, unfortunately neglected by the present owner. There were a lot of problems, I think, with running the stock here early. Well, I know there were, because liver fluke were a tremendous problem. I don't know how they really coped with that. And it was almost impossible to breed young stock here because the copper and cobalt deficiencies were so bad that young stock just would not survive. Their bones and joints were so weak. In fact, I found an old 1911 stock journal here, and it shows where all the mares and foals were sent to Winnaleah on adjustment, a shilling a week for the mare and 6pence for the foal, so that they could grow out decent horses to work the property with. And because a lot of these problems really weren't sorted out until probably the 1940s. There was the problem also of not being able to get any clover into any pasture, because at that time there was no understanding of the need for inoculation of clover. And it wasn't until the soldier settlement scheme started that fortunately they did define the answer to that by inoculating clover, that they could actually produce decent pastures. And that's really been the thing that's made the area productive. You still have to be very careful here and watch for those deficiencies, but providing they are corrected, it's very productive. And up until fairly recently the climate was very reliable too, but not quite so reliable now. So we're looking at the front of the main house at Waterhouse, and it's a place that I lived in for close to 20 years, I think, and I hated the place really because it was so big and rambling, and there was absolutely no outlook from any window in the place. You just felt locked in there, and it just did not suit me at all. It was big and very hard to warm up, and quite all right in the summertime, but I eventually had the choice of maintaining it or buying myself a nice little unit in Bridport, and I chose the latter. Yeah.
And you said that the governor came anyway.
Well, yes, Mrs. Clifford told me that she and Phil had to entertain it may have been at a centenary or something like that they were asked to entertain the governor and his wife. I think it was Sir Ronald Cross, and Mrs. Clifford said she was very concerned about entertaining the governor's wife, but she soon found that the gin bottle made it very, very easy. Yeah, well, we're standing here in front of the shearers' quarters, which at Waterhouse Homestead. This building, I'm not sure when it was built, but it's probably fairly early, in the very early 1900s. It's built to a standard plan, apparently. There are several identical buildings on large properties around the state. That consists of about 6, I think, little two-bedroom rooms and a big kitchen and dining room and all the stuff that goes with feeding a mob of shearers. The shearing here, with about 5 shearers, would have had to look after about at least 15 men, and so it would have been a big job to feed them and accommodate them. There was an extension put on the place at one stage when the unions decided they were only allowed to put two men to a room, 2 beds to a room, and at the same time they banned the cyclone mattresses that squeaked so much. And I guess this building could tell a lot of stories. I don't know of any of the stories, but the shearing was done here for many years by a team of shearers employed by Grascos, who started their run in Queensland, in Longreach I think, and worked their way down the eastern seaboard and finished their run just before Christmas here at Waterhouse. And I think this was a sort of a wind-up for them, and they all went home again. And I can remember as a child seeing them coming in, or not as a child, as a young boy, seeing them come into Scottsdale on Saturday nights occasionally, and they used to celebrate in a big way, really big way, yeah.
How many sheep would they have been shearing?
There was about, I think about 12,000. They shore about 12,000 here, yeah.
So actually, it would have been Waterhouse, and the next one would have been Morgan's, would it?
Morgan's,
at
yeah.
Boobyalla.
But it was all part of this operation.
Right.
Robbie Reid told me the story. He was a real wild young fella, Robbie Reid, when he was here, and he told me the story of how he had a phone call from Alf Brasendale, who was over at Morgan's, and he said, "You've got to come over immediately today, but it can't wait, and I can't tell you on the phone." It was to do with stock stealing, apparently. And he said, Robbie said, "I had a dental appointment in Elfin Road at 11 o'clock the next morning." He said, "I jumped out of bed and before daylight. I got on the horse and I rode to Morgan's, and I rode back, nearly killed the horse, jumped in the ute, and I hit a woman with the ute in Elfin Road and almost killed her, but I still made the dental appointment at 11 o'clock.
So what have we got here, Eric?
Well, this is an old boiler that I've been told was brought here from the Lindhurst goldfield, I suppose when the goldfield ran out. And I don't know how they got it here, but it'd weigh a heck of a lot. I don't know how much, but I imagine the only thing they would have had to get it here would have been bullocks.
So they obviously dragged it here just as a water tank.
Yeah, I can't think they wouldn't have had any other reason to use.
No.
You know, they wouldn't have had any other use.
In 1869, Louis Richardson, a shepherd on the Waterhouse estate, discovered flecks of gold in a lump of quartz. The Lindhurst gold rush was on. Okay, Graeme, so we're at the Lindhurst Township, aren't we?
Yeah, the Lindhurst Township. This is the road that goes to Tomahawk,
right,
over the Sheepwash Bridge.
What's it called on the map?
Duquesne. The
road to Duquesne.
Road to Duquesne.
I think Tomahawk was.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and the actual street here is called Tomahawk Street.
Right.
Yeah.
And what else have we got here?
We've got the police reserve. There goes up there first, and then there's streets.
Right.
Another street there. What's that one? Can't see what that.
Granted Street.
Granted Street, yeah. And the old shortcut that used to be through there is called Susan Street.
Right.
I know that one.
And there are quite a few buildings here.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of buildings. There was 4 hotels here scattered right through here.
And I suppose there must have been a police station if there was a police reserve.
Yeah, police reserve. There was a police station here.
Right. Well, what we'll do, Graeme, I'll get you to walk up the
old
road, Duquesne Road, and we'll go and find out where these bricks are and the old hotel used to be.
Righto.
That's good.
And here's where all these bricks are.
Oh, all right.
pile off there. Would be where one of the old buildings were, where one of the hotels. Something, I suppose it was here. A few of the old bricks.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So all that's
Can't
left?
find any with the thumbprint in them yet.
No.
There was some here, but I know they've got them from here.
See, all that stuff would have had to have been brought in, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah.
Like bricks for foundations for the pub.
Yeah.
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 I just find it interesting that, you know, you get all these people who drive past here and they never know that there used to be a gold
No.
mine here. On Graeme Reid's property at Lindhurst, in an area fenced off, are the remains of the old Alliance mine. It had a crushing mill, winding gear and steam engine. Graeme was eager to show us where it all lay hidden in the bush, but you had to be careful as there were deep mine shafts scattered about. So what have we got here, Graeme?
This is where the old boiler was, I assume. Yeah.
And what mine do we think this might be?
The Alliance. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it's unusual, isn't it, that it's got a...
Big water tank out of here and took it up to Homestead.
It's interesting that the inside of it is round.
Yeah.
The outside of it's...
Homestead in here, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fair construction.
Oh yeah.
So they would have been using this to produce steam, I assume.
I reckon. Yeah.
There's a bit of work going into shifting those rocks.
Yes. Stack it. Yeah.
How many people do you reckon you thought were out at Lyndhurst?
I thought there was 4,000 and 7 hotels, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't last long, did it?
No.
It was kind of one of these boom and bust things.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just amazing. You think of all, in those days there would have been people running around here everywhere.
Oh yes. I reckon. Well, that's the main Lindhurst one, I reckon. I don't know, it's the only biggest, deepest one we found.
How deep you say it was?
Kevin put a fishing line down there, went down 200 feet.
So, and this
That was years ago, and you sort of can't get at it now.
No.
Yeah.
It's a good job you fenced it off.
Oh yeah, Pop fenced it off.
Did he?
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
So this would have been right in the middle of the mine, the whole
that
mining.
was the main, yeah, because the boiler was over there.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because
they carted a lot of stuff from over there.
Yep.
To here. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because this was 1869, 1870, so it's going back a few years, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
It's amazing that actually the hole's still here. You would have thought it would have been filled in, because they filled a lot of them in, didn't they?
Yeah, the old boiler was took to the Homestead.
Ah.
From here, out of there.
I've got a video of that, up on top of the hill. They used it as a water tank.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So that was here.
Yeah, that was here, taken from over here at the rock wall.
Right.
And they took it over when the ag bank was here, I think.
Right. Pushing further into the bush, we passed other hidden mine shafts and part of the mine's winding gear. A case of salting a mine was recorded at Lindhurst, but the culprits were caught and arrested in Launceston. The amount of gold recovered each month varied considerably, from 158 ounces in April 1870 to only 81 ounces in July. So what are we looking at here, Graeme?
That's the, what do you call them? It's what they used to carry the stuff up out of the mine shaft.
So there would have been a pulley on the end of that.
Yeah.
And
what's left of it.
And a rope at least 200 foot long.
I reckon.
Yeah. I wonder how much gold they got out of it.
Yeah, there was a lot, I don't know. Yeah, they had to crush it, didn't they?
Yeah. They would have been, there'd be some records somewhere that'd tell us. But they never really made a profit, did they?
No, it cost more to get it out than what they made out of it.
Down the Waterhouse Road towards Tomahawk is Sheepwash Creek. Somewhere along this creek, a 10-head battery was erected to crush the ore from the Pioneer Gold Mine at Lindhurst. Miss Fanny Brewer of Bowood had the honour of declaring the battery open. A banquet was held to celebrate the event, and according to A.W. Loon, there was enough brandy, whisky, gin and beer to almost swim in. Later that evening, the miners returned to the town 2 miles away and could be heard singing, "Hard times come again no more." It is appropriate to finish the history of the Waterhouse area at Sheepwash Creek, as it was from here that the extensive redevelopment of the area started with a post-World War II Waterhouse closer settlement scheme. It was at Sheepwash Creek the headquarters camp for the scheme was built. The aim was to convert often swampy, previously third-grade grazing land into farms that would support dairying, crop grazing and more intensive farming, as well as providing a living for returned servicemen. Part 3 of the Waterhouse story will show how with the use of heavy machinery the land was cleared and drained.
There was the Thorpe camp, and then there was the second camp, the one that I started at, but we was working back towards Thorpe.
Right.
They'd moved the camp on.
Interviews with many of the original soldier settlers will tell how the scheme progressed and the trials and tribulations of these people.
Huts and took them out to Sheepwash.
Right.
And I carted all those huts on the Bulldogs and a trailer.
All right.
Loaded them on the bloody trailer, and Lenny Jones, he was the carpenter, him and I loaded them up and away we went, you know.
Today we can see the rewards offered by the work of these early settlers, which has produced a rich agricultural economy based on improved pasture and the use of water in a low rainfall region.